well-meaning skeptic. Is it possible to live ethically? Is there any possible situation or outcome that someone can find themselves in where they are living a truly ethical existence? This is really just a brain dump. We're not going to come to any serious conclusions here, but that's okay. I think even just having the conversation is beneficial. We could touch on a few different areas, I guess, where people look at what makes up an ethical life. I'm not thinking so much of ways that you can live more ethically, but live completely ethically. Now, of course, again, this is not going to be solvable because everyone looks at what is ethical differently. This is going to be a bit more of a rambly-pambly, all over the place kind of video. The way I would think of an ideal, maybe unattainable version of living ethically would be that everything is shared in commons and kind of pre-industrial civilization, hunter-gatherer kind of ethical. So let's talk about housing. The argument has been made that any private property is a version of theft and therefore is unethical. So I guess unless we're living in a commune somewhere where everything is more or less equally shared, yeah, maybe you have your own personal residence, but people can come and go in and out as much as they please. If they need something from you, they can borrow it. It's an open door policy. But anytime there's anything that's privately owned, some people would consider that just unethical from the start. If we're looking at it from the idea that any private property is unethical, is there any way to live, say in North America, where we could meet an ethical standard? Even if you wanted to start a commune, you'd probably still need to buy some plot of land and set up your commune there, where then maybe everyone who lives there contributes as best they can to maintain still owning that property. In places like Sweden, I believe they still have the law where even on private property, people are allowed to hike there and picnic there, and that's not off limits to people, but there's still private property. So maybe that's a more ethical private property, but I don't know if it meets the ideal standard of perfectly ethical. I'd argue unless maybe you really are living nomadically, you've got a backpack and a tent and somehow you are just living off the land, that's maybe the only way you could live purely, totally ethically is just by, living in a tent and just traveling around and subsisting off whatever you can find. Now we go into the realm of consumption. A lot of debate still around ethical consumption. In fact, I think there's a lot of marketing and just consumer industries that take advantage of trying to market things as being more ethical because there's a rise in people wanting to live more ethically, which I think is good. I guess the problem is who is ethical is more ethical than that other person's ethical. That wasn't as much of a tongue twister as I thought it might be. But anyway, I hear more and more, which is interesting, people saying that, well, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And if you believe in the idea that at any one point in that chain of processes that is required and goes into producing the service or good that you then consume and make happen and perpetuate happening by consuming it and paying for it over and over again. At any time, if there's some form of exploitation or illegal activity or anything, unfair treatment, injustice, and that adding to it being unethical, then I would say that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. If we're looking at things in, I guess, a maybe Marxist lens, looking at economics and labor and surplus value and profit and all that stuff, and how if someone is getting paid less than the actual value of their work creates, then that's exploitation. If we're looking at things that way, then anyone who's working basically is getting exploited to some degree or another. No one is getting paid exactly how much value they're actually creating. There's always some surplus that's getting extracted and given to someone else. There's always some exploitation there, and which means if everyone who's working and isn't the one receiving the excess value in form of profit, anyone who's just working, then they're being exploited, and that's unethical if you're looking at things in this sense. And so then anything we buy will then be unethical because it requires all these different people to allow you to consume this thing. So if everyone is being exploited to some degree, then yeah, nothing you can buy on the market, on any market, is ethical. Some people will disagree with this model that I'm using, and that's okay. Some people don't have a problem with people making a lower wage because, yeah, they're starting out not making very much, but as they work and get more competent and get more skilled and progress through their life, they'll make more and, rise up the ranks, and they got to pay their dues at the beginning. Being exploited for their labor and not making as much, that is okay because they're just paying their dues. It's kind of like an unpaid internship. Some people might feel like unpaid internships are okay and not unethical because you got to pay your dues, right? So if you're someone that believes in paying dues, that person, I guess, would probably find a lot of things more ethical than other people that disagree with paying dues as a way to, I guess, overlook exploitation. The disagreement here would just be whether you consider exploitation in the sense of not being paid your full value of what you're producing and some of that being extracted. If you don't consider that exploitation, well, then other things are more allowable. And you could consider buying some things ethical. Like some people look at ethical chocolate as, oh, the farmers that produce the cacao beans apparently were given a better wage, I guess, than other cocoa producers. Not exactly how the whole ethically sourced thing works, but I always suspect it doesn't really operate on that model of looking at what exploitation is. I think it's using a different model. I think that different model is more just people aren't paid in, I don't know, seeds or something. They're actually paid in money, and enough money to continue, their operations, basically, and have a somewhat okay life, I guess. I guess that's what ethically sourced is supposed to mean. I think it's like a label you can stamp on stuff to make people feel a little better. Like, okay, they're getting paid more than some other people that are not being ethically sourced. I think it just makes us feel a little better to believe that some products are actually created sustainably and some aren't. That's what I'm guessing. Maybe, I could be wrong. I don't really know how ethically sourced cacao, how that chain of events happens and how it's different. That's my limited knowledge of that subject. That's my assumption. But what about the actual consuming the thing itself? Food is definitely one of the most common in terms of being in the center of the discussion around ethics. There's a lot of ways to look at it. I think it's very interesting. For example, a lot of people just kind of eat whatever, right? A mix of things, right? Maybe don't even think too much about what they're eating, and then other people will want to read all the ingredients that go into their food, and they want to know exactly where all the food is coming from, which I think is probably good. If you have the time and energy for that, it's probably good to know where everything is coming from. That allows you to survive. Good to be more aware than not, I think. It's not always easy to handle the truth. And you know what? I don't fault people for that. I don't think it's necessarily our place to say, wake up. Who are we to say, wake up? Maybe we're asleep. We think we're awake, but maybe we're the ones that are asleep. And then we wake up and then we realize how asleep we were. And then we were like, wow, how much we were telling other people to wake up when we were actually asleep. We were asleep telling other sleep people to wake up, but we ourselves were asleep. Anyway, even the debate between going, say, vegan and then still consuming meat, or only meat. There's those two camps. I'd say the argument for veganism, a lot of them frame it around living more ethically, which is they see how animals are treated in slaughterhouses and they look at, well, geez, we wouldn't be okay with humans being treated this way. I think that's a good thing. There's some civilizing effects have taken place, I suppose. So people feel like now the next frontier in terms of civil rights would be with animals, right? Let's now treat animals as humanely as we try to treat humans. So then some people feel like, okay, well, the less meat you eat, the more ethically you're living. Now, then people have pointed out that, well, where are you getting your non-meat products, right? A lot of these are still coming from big farms that require a lot of pesticides and chemicals and things.
You ever plow a field summer to plant the quinoa or sorghum or whatever the hell it is you eat? You kill everything on the ground and under it. You kill every snake, every frog, every mouse, mole, vole, worm, quail. You kill them all. So I guess the only real question is, how cute does an animal have to be before you care if it dies to feed you?
Some people could say, well, yeah, that's the problem with factory farming in general. Vegetable factory farms are also bad. That's why you just want a local small garden, that kind of thing. Then you get into the whole thing, well, could 8 billion people survive off just local farms? I don't know. Maybe we could. It'd be cool if we tried it. I think if we really tried it, maybe we could. I think if we were all eating healthier in general, we would also just be eating less food because you'd actually be getting your nutrients faster from more nutrient-rich food, right? So maybe it is possible. Also, if we were better with food waste and all that kind of stuff. The way people saying, we'll look back at this time 20 years from now and look at how we treated eating animals as a form of murder, right? Even if you try and kill animals as humanely as possible, it's still killing. It's still unethical. What about plants? Maybe 100 years from now, we'll develop the technology to be able to communicate with plants and find out how much they've been getting hurt by our actions. Whether maybe it hurts to puncture a maple tree and suck out its sap. Maybe that's unethical. That's kind of could be gross if you look at a tree as a living thing, which trees are living. And, we look at, oh, no, it's different, right? Animals make noises when we puncture them and suck out their innards, but trees don't. We think they don't. We don't know how to listen to trees' cries. We don't know how to properly hear the cries and screams of trees. I think that's the thing. If we get to that point, then shoot, we can't eat anything without it being unethical. Let's say we at least take the route of, we don't think a lion is unethical for eating what it needs to eat to survive. So if we allow humans to eat what they need to survive, they can pull up carrots, mushrooms, and hunt an animal that was treated with respect after, and you used everything of the animal. The death was as painless as possible. It's okay. It's ethical because humans have to eat what they need to survive. The thing I just find interesting, I guess, about this whole discussion is, it's like a lot of things. Living ethically, it's wrapped up a lot in artificial forms of status or feeling superior to other people. I think it kind of defeats the point of living an ethical life. I think if you're already advertising or telling people how much more ethically you're living than other people, are you really living ethically? Because I would argue that the ethical life includes not rubbing it in other people's faces how ethically you're living. I know this topic will be so easy to disagree with, and that's the point. That's a great thing about this topic. Not only maybe is living ethically different for every single person, the same way that consuming food is different for each organism. Some organisms only need kelp. Is it kelp or krill? Right? Whales eat krill.
Whales don't eat clownfish, they eat krill. Swim away! Oh look, krill!
But if you fed just krill to a lion or tiger or bear, oh my, they would be just struggling. If we're going by this particular method that I have devised right now, you would have to live completely off the land, just, eating berries and huntables and herdables and maybe not even herdables. Is it even ethical to domesticate animals or to use any kind of husbandry at all? I don't know. Is husbandry ethical? That's a whole other question. I got a lot of questions here. Is it possible to do the husbandry ethically? I don't know, because there's still domestication and corralling and controlling. Isn't it a form of controlling animals? No animal is born that way, but some have been conditioned to be used in husbandry. So on one hand, you'd have to live very nomadically, build all your own supplies, build your own tools, sew your own clothes. You'd have to find wild sheep. I mean, the sheep, I guess, grow their wool naturally. So if you sheared them, they might be a little cold for a little while. You could argue, well, it's good to maybe shear them now and then. I don't know. I mean, I think sheep weren't born in nature to be shorn, to have them be sheared, to have their wool be sheared. Is it even ethically to shear a sheep?
Do something, Ronald.
Maybe to do this, we have to allow ourselves some exceptions. I don't know. Okay, well, say shearing a sheep is okay. Maybe the sheep, it feels good in the summer to have some of the layers taken off. So you can make some clothing out of a consenting sheep's sheared wool. And the tools and everything you're able to make from rocks and sticks and ropes and whatnot. Say you're able to make everything you need to completely in nature, but you're still only eating stuff that's in the wild. You could live ethically, I guess, in terms of just living off the land, eating only what you need and doing so respectfully and using it all as much as you can, and living in accordance with nature and living in nature and not taking more than your fair share and not controlling and possessing and owning things that you will then deny other people. Just a lot of stuff to chew on, but a lot of stuff to, gnaw, and a lot of stuff to, just maybe be a little easier on people and yourself. Be a little kinder, judge less, live more, love more, laugh more, live, laugh, love. The thing is, first of all, everyone has a different way of looking at what is ethical. I wouldn't want someone to judge me for how I'm living, so I'm not going to judge them. A simple rule. That was some of the stuff that popped into my head about ethics and is it even possible to live ethically? But I'd love to hear your take down in the comments, and I'll see you around, I'm sure.